Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today I wanted to talk through the Sivir mid-scope rework changes that are currently on the PvE testing, but which are also being discussed over on Twitter. One of the designers is talking about the changes that he intends to make for Sivir, and I wanted to cover those changes today and give my thoughts. I do play Sivir a fair amount, as long-term viewers of the channel probably know. She shows up in a lot of these recordings, so definitely I think I have the experience to comment a little bit on the state of these changes and to kind of try to look at these as a holistic approach and not necessarily just as a I want my champion to be stronger. So anyways, I'm going to go through the changes. I will have them linked down in the description, of course, if you want to look at them yourself, starting here with the base stats. Now, generally speaking, these changes are aimed at removing lethality Sivir as a build choice, since it's a little cheesy and doesn't really make use of Sivir's whole kit, and sort of gives Sivir a more modern feel to the game, similar to the Xin Zhao changes or the Janna changes that we had a few months ago. If you guys remember those, these won't involve any like major ability swaps or major ability replacements. Instead, they're all just sort of tweaks in mechanically what those abilities do. I'll start with the base stats here, though, because I think they're relevant for the lethality nerfs that I was talking about. Sivir's mana regen, base AD, and base AD have all gone down. Her AD per level, though, has gone up to compensate for the base AD decrease. Now, this generally means that Sivir's going to have less mana to work with, and this is a bit of a bugbear for me for reasons that we'll talk about here in a little bit, but certainly it is going to hurt the effectiveness of lethality Sivir early on. Her base HP has also gone down, though this looks more to be just a rounding issue for Riot. They want her to have a nice clean health total as opposed to the 632 she was at, and her attack speed per level has gone up, so trading a little bit of that raw AD power for better attack speed, which is sort of going to be the theme of these changes as we move through them. The passive, I don't really mind any of these base stat changes. I think it's generally a good direction going forward, except for the mana, which we'll touch on. The passive is now a decaying movement speed bonus instead of the flat, but also the movement speed bonus is increased by 10 at all levels. This is kind of nice. I like the small bursts of movement speed because I think it makes it more obvious what is happening. Oftentimes I feel like movement speed bonuses, especially at very low values, are unappreciable. Nami is, I think, a big example of this, where Surging Tides used to give a very small amount of movement speed, and basically everyone except the Nami player didn't know that she actually gave movement speed. So even with a lot of the buffs that Riot have given her over the years, I think that's still a very unappreciated part of Nami's kit, and so I like the decaying boost on Sivir's passive here because it makes it feel a little bit more obvious. It means that if she's able to stay in combat, she'll just be able to benefit from the full movement speed the whole time, but it also means that just hitting a champion isn't going to give you the same amount of movement speed you're used to, because unlike having it over the full 2 seconds, it'll immediately start dropping off once you gain it. Q is where the biggest nerfs to lethality Sivir are at. The base damage on her Q has gone down, the total AD ratio has gone down, and the cooldown has also been increased at all ranks. However, there are some spicy changes here to kind of help balance it out. The cast time now scales down with Sivir's attack speed, and the ability scales with crit chance up to 100% bonus damage. So if you're building crit, your Q is going to hit way harder than it used to, which is kind of a fun little change, and it does push Sivir more into the attack speed, critical strike chance, late game build path versus her current lethality-oriented builds. Now, there were some very small tweaks here as well. The cost on the ability went down. This is fair given that her base mana went down as well, and the missile speed has also been adjusted to be faster on the way out and slower on the way back in. What this means is it'll be easier to hit the first launch of the Q, but it might be harder if that target is directly in front of you to guarantee that they'll be hit with the follow-up afterwards. Though obviously the tipper plays where you throw a Q and you hit them with the out version and the in version, right, those are still going to be basically unchanged. So I kind of like this. W is where the biggest changes are here, and I do quite like these. So first, the bonus attack speed on W, W gives bonus attack speed. They've moved the attack speed gain when W is active from her R to her W, which means that her laning phase is going to be much stronger, and the buff duration has been changed from 3 attacks to 4 seconds. What this means is that if Sivir has a lot of attack speed, she'll be able to actually benefit from her W way more than she currently does on live, because she'll be able to get way more ricochet-based auto attacks off in the duration of the ability, versus right now where you get 3, and that's all you really can do until the ability comes back off cooldown. Riot have made some small changes here, though. They have changed the maximum bounces of Sivir's W from infinite to 8 per ricochet. Now, this is generally an irrelevant change, I think, in every situation other than dealing with an extremely stacked up minion wave, right? Like, if you think of, if the entire enemy team is there, you'll still be able to ricochet at least once to all of the enemy team. If there's an entire minion wave, you can hit the entire minion wave and then 2 champions. Generally, that's not that big of a deal, and especially when you consider that the boomerangs, ricochets, can now bounce back to targets that they've already hit. It will attempt to find new targets first, so if it's surrounded by targets that have all been hit once and there's a target that hasn't been hit yet, it will go to that target before it starts doubling back. But it does mean that Sivir can theoretically put up a lot of damage against clumped up teams, which is sort of what Riot are trying to do with these changes, and I think that's generally a fair change to make, especially since she'll be able to get so many more ricochets going than she used to if she has attack speed going. Now, the cost of the ability is decreasing with rank as well, and the bounce range has been very slightly increased, though the total AD ratio of this ability has gone down, meaning that Sivir will need to have that attack speed in order to get more ricochets going in order to keep her damage the same on after these changes as it is on live. Generally a fan of these changes. The back half of Sivir's kit is where I think all of my issues stem from. Now, first, E no longer refunds mana on a successful spell block. It's a bit of a flavor fail, in my opinion, though disregarding that entirely. Losing the mana refund on her E is a pretty big deal because Sivir's base mana went down, and even though the mana cost on her other abilities has also gone down, I do feel like it's still a bit iffy on Sivir being able to actually use her spells. The other problem is that Riot have been toying with giving E a mana cost, so you have to pay mana to use your E. This, I think, would be a tremendous mistake because you would go from Sivir having only 2 mouths to feed, so to speak, with her mana bar into 3. And I feel like with the reduction in her mana already and with the reduction in her ability to regenerate mana with spell shield blocks, this would just completely remove Sivir's ability to play the game and to cast her spells as she currently does. Now, Riot do give spell shield a heal now, so successfully blocking a spell will heal Sivir on when you're able to do that with the spell shield, which is quite nice, and it also procs fleet of foot if you need that slight burst of movement speed in order to get to point A to point B. I like this. I think this is an okay change. I do feel like trying to bait, champions to throw spells at you so you can regenerate mana isn't necessarily a good idea. I like the thought of Sivir being able to potentially sponge off some damage that she might have taken earlier in the fight by spell shielding an ability and get that burst of heal. That, I think, is sort of an okay direction for the ability to take, but definitely I think this ability should not have a mana cost tied to it at all. Finally, there's the ultimate, and there are some things about the ultimate that I like here. Now, first, the ultimate lasts longer. It now scales up to a 12-second duration at maximum rank, which is kind of nice. And Sivir's auto attacks during the hunt reduce her basic ability cooldowns by half a second per. This is kind of nice. I do like this as an idea behind the ability, by letting Sivir pop the hunt and then be able to access her base kit a lot more often. Now, her W doesn't start its cooldown until after the duration has subsided, which means that if Sivir starts the hunt and immediately presses W, and then she theoretically won't get another W off before the end of the hunt unless she's really auto-attacking a lot. So that's sort of a bit of a bugbear for me, but I think that's an okay effect, especially when you consider the hunt refreshes on a recently damaged takedown. That's kind of nice. It keeps the hunt going. I think the issue I have with this is that the movement speed for Sivir and her allies is now 20 to 30%, and there is no initial movement speed burst. And the reason I dislike this is because I feel like Sivir on live does not have a big play she can make that's exclusively hers. Not really, right? She has the one skill shot that's very slow moving, easily dodgeable, even if it's a large skill shot. She can block an ability with her spell shield. That's not that impressive. And the rest of what she does is walk around and auto attack things. The one play she could kind of make that was her own was gathering the team up, popping on the hunt, and watching as everyone sprinted at the enemy team with all of that burst, that initial burst of movement speed that really lets you close the gap. It gave you synergies with bruisers. It allowed you to actually kind of sort of call the shots for the team by saying, let's go, let's fight right now. The issue I have with the burst of movement speed going away is that Sivir can't make that play anymore. She just kind of presses the button and arbitrarily gives people movement speed nearby. 30% I don't think is going to be nearly enough to actually let allies get into a fight. And unfortunately, that means that Sivir just feels like a pretty flat character. What she'll do in a team fight is ambiently give everyone movement speed, auto-attack the nearest target for ricochet damage, and that's sort of it. She's just sitting there auto-attacking and walking around and being an aura bot in a similar vein to like Sona back in Season 2. That's not very fun. I don't think that's a very interesting playstyle for the character to have, and again, it's not like she doesn't already do a lot of this on live, but I think the problem I have is that she at least has something proactive she can do with her ultimate on live. In this patch, I really don't think it's going to do that much. What I would love to see is potentially remove the basic ability cooldown refresh on the ultimate. I don't think that's that cool of an ability. It's kind of nice, but I would be willing to lose that in exchange for that initial burst of movement speed on the hunt activation, because I think that at least preserves some of Sivir's ability to set plays up and do things on her own. But you guys will have to let me know what you think of it down in the comment section below. Generally, I'm happy with this rework. There are just a couple of tweaks and a couple of things that I really hope don't go through in the final changes, because I do hope that Riot are able to keep that burst of movement speed and preserve some of her ease identity by at least not having it have a mana cost. But like I said, you'll have to let me know all this down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video today, go ahead and leave it a like. And if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it. And I'll talk to you all later.